Nascimento. I am originally from Brazil, living in the UK, and I'm art director and co-founder of Bunnyhug Games, an international studio, tiny indie stuff.
Hi, my name is Sithe Ncube. I'm originally from Zambia, but I live in South Africa, and I'm the founder and director of Prosearium.net. And yeah, I love games.
Hi, my name is Rausch. I'm a director of the UK and Team Lazerbeam, and I recorded the podcast
Hi, my name is Renee Gittins, and I am the Executive Director of the International Game Developers Association, the IGDA. We are so looking forward to supporting the Pathfindin's event. Events like this are extremely important in supporting marginalized voices and uplifting game developers around the world.
I am Gwen Foster. I'm a senior BizDev with RobotDaddy, which means I get to work with studios like Superhot. I also make games on the side with an all-Filipino team from the Philippines called Chikon. And if you follow me on Twitter, this with all of you and how this project came about and why there should be more events like this.
Do I get started? I feel like it's not necessarily on a map, all the countries in the south of the map, but the countries that, for me, it's the countries that are either in development or emerging with emerging economies. And we're usually a lot of us are very diverse nations when it comes to race and cultures. And we are all very different, but we do share some struggles.
So I did actually have to look this up, when we started this. But I think what I've come to understand the Global South is countries and cultures that are outside of what we would consider, which is mostly North America, the United States of America, Britain, and some other countries in Europe. So the cultures and countries that are outside of that.
So I started fairly early. I started working at 16, but I did not start working in games, even though I had a bit of course in it, because there was no access for people like me to the games industry in Brazil. So I started working with animation and graphic design, and from there I started freelancing to people from the US and Europe, because sadly there was nobody that could actually hire me in Brazil back then, 10 years ago. And from that, once I got the opportunity, I moved to Canada and continued freelancing. Then I moved to the UK, and I got by getting a job at Chucklefish, and I stayed there for almost 2.5 years. And after that, I got the opportunity of founding Bunnyhug with my partner. And yeah, that's where I am today.
So my journey started in about 2013. I was kind of in a space just before going to university and after high school, where I was exploring things to do, and I got interested in, when I was working at a tech hub at the time, just kind of as a social media manager, and I was getting in touch with communities. They were interested in seeing the types of communities that of tech that people had around Osaka, and they encouraged me to explore what I was interested in. And the things I was interested in at the times were like makerspace technology. At the time, I wanted to be a robotics engineer, and the other thing was game development. So I started. So for makerspace technology, it was easy to find people in Osaka because I just told people, "Oh, hey, making cool stuff." But for game development, I just came across one person at the time, and he actually inspired me. He was like the first person I met in Zambia who made a game, and I thought it was really cool because I didn't even know that we could do that. We could make our own games, and I was like, "Oh, well, this is so cool!" Like, and if he knows, like, someone else must know. So from there, I just started looking for people. I think since then, like it's 2030, like I'm always trying to look for people who are making games in places where people have never really heard of them. So that's mostly in Africa, starting in Zambia, and I also. After we applied to host the World Game Jam in 2014, the next year I joined as a regional organizer for Sub-Saharan Africa, and it was, I guess, the right space for me to start looking to keep my eye out for people from our region who are making games in interesting places, and that kind of led me to work with things like Amaze Johannesburg and even Amaze Berlin as part of their program management, and followed a bunch of initiatives after that. And my current work with Prosearium is looking for African women specifically. So I think that kind of what I've been doing so far. No really formal work at the moment, so formal full-time work in games. But I've always been a part of the community since like 2013, and I hope I continue to do things like that because I really like what I do.
So I had a pretty unconventional pathway, I guess, into getting involved in making games. Through the whole of my 20s, I was really involved in a very broad spread of different creative projects, and often kind of beat myself up for being like, why am I trying to do so many things all at once? But I was very involved, particularly, I guess, in events, in putting on sort of alternative, different sorts of events in Johannesburg in the last decade, which was quite an exciting time. It's a very vibrant, cool city with a lot of cool people doing a lot of interesting things. And so I was involved in, organizing events and screenings, animation, illustration, DJing, publishing music, recording music, doing live visual performance of music. This whole spread of different things where I was like, why am I doing so many things all at once? And in 2014, I got into games and suddenly everything just kind of gelled, where all of these different interests that I had all started plugging into each other. And how that happened was I got invited to an event in Cape Town just after I moved to the city. And it was inside an indoor skate park in a parking lot, an old parking lot. And that was the very first Super French arcade. And just went to that and was like totally blown away by the fact that I was seeing all these really amazing games that were coming out of South Africa, and also just how welcoming and friendly everyone was, and how encouraging they were for everyone to kind of get involved. Literally grabbing people and putting controllers in their hands and being like, play now, So I was very inspired by that and very quickly got pulled into the fold, where by the second Super Friendship Arcade, I had an alternative controller game on show, and by the next one I was actually involved in doing artwork and design for the event and helping to just kind of organize it and pull the whole thing together. And so receiving such a warm, encouraging welcome into making games definitely inspired me to also try as hard as I could to kind of pass that on and to be someone else that could welcome new people into making games and encourage people and pass on any kind of skills or knowledge that I had to other people. Which, sort of also opened the doorways into us setting up the Playtopia Festival, which kind of was quite a, how would you say, like a knock-on effect from Amaze Johannesburg, which happened for 5 years that ran for. With Playtopia, we just kind of wanted to continue that idea of having an alternative sort of games festival that painted games in a new light and helped to inspire and grow the industry. In terms of making my own games, I've just released my first proper Steam game, but I've been releasing games myself in a more informal sense for the last 6 years with a game called Team Lazerbeam. We sort of just grouped together at a game jam and just clicked really well. There's 3 of us, and we kind of see ourselves as like a video game band. So the same way that a music band would have each person plays their own instrument and they come together to create something together, we try to take that same format and feed that into making video games together.
Definitely. So I think the biggest festival related to games in Brazil is the Games Festival. And I remember back when I'm still in Brazil, that was a really big problem with it, which all the indies would complain about, which is the prices to rent a stand or for entry were not Brazilian prices. They are prices that only international people or international companies could afford. And with our currency being very weak, you can imagine that was a lot. And I remember there were talks about let's do an event right next to big, a tiny event that you can play loads of indie games and it's free and everyone gets to show them and there's no weird almost like selection, because not only you had to pay but you also you had to get accepted. So the prices were at a point that even if a lot of indies got together to share a booth, it would be not only way too expensive still, but they wouldn't have space to show their games because it would be a booth with 20 people, and a booth that would usually be used for a single game. So that was the problem that we were having. The tickets to enter big are still very expensive for the Brazilian people. And other than that, all the other events that we had in Brazil, they were very small. They were organized by a tiny group of friends, and they would be very good grassroots, and they were excellent. But with that, we wouldn't have the opportunity to reach the public that they had. So that has been my experience in Brazil. So I have shown games of mine in several. I had the privilege now to show games at PAX, to show games at GDC, to show games at EGX as well, but I never had the opportunity of showing it in my own country because of that.
Yes, so my experience with events, with game development events, I guess the big one is GDC, which was actually the first conference I ever went to. Some people might remember I did a crowdfunding campaign at the time. Well, my friends, other people closer to me might remember that. And even before I did that, I was given a pass to go to GDC from Zambia, and it was a great opportunity. But of course, I needed to raise the funds myself to go there. And at the time, I think I had to raise like $3,000 for flight and accommodation. And it's It's always a lot to ask. It was a lot like to just get that out of nowhere. Yeah, actually, I don't even know if I'm remembering correctly, but I know it was $3,000. I don't know if that was justified or if it included other stuff. Someone correct me. I don't know, but it's a lot. It's a lot. And if you look at the list, I think there was a list which Brownie made a while ago on the cost for each country to go to GDC. And when I looked at it, I realized that it was like we were like in the region of the most expensive. I was like, whoa. And it was quite overwhelming for me because I was traveling outside for the first time. And also, of course, the pressure of having to make the most of that time going, because it's like, oh, when do we ever go again? What we do, like, instead of just me relaxing and actually having a level head and enjoying and probably networking with people and stuff like that. Even if I needed to network with people, I don't know. After that event, like I had so many, I was taking every opportunity to network and everything, and I had a huge pile of business cards, which I probably still have in a giant envelope in my room. And I didn't even know what to do with it because it was so overwhelming. And I kept thinking that, oh my gosh, like I have to make that trip have been worthwhile. And it was just like, it was so much, and it was so much. And now that I'm older, I guess this is like 3 or 4 years later, and I think about what I can do with $3,000 right here. I could probably do something way more impactful if I had $3,000 here, and it's something which I would have never thought about back then. And that's the thing with with a lot of these conferences which we have to travel to. Like, it shouldn't have to be that way. It shouldn't be that someone that I'm from Zambia and or even someone else from Zambia who is just as talented as someone in another part of the world, but we don't have access to publishers and companies that can help with funding and things like that. It shouldn't be that someone has to travel all the way, has to get that money to travel all the way just to make a small difference, a small possibility of their game going somewhere. It shouldn't have to be like that. So yeah, that's my experience. Yeah.
So yeah, my experience is also of sort of outside events very limited. Given I think as well that my focus as a game developer was on making non-commercial games, it makes it even harder to justify anything, any sort of travel like that, of getting onto something like GDC. Sithe, as you say, like just the cost of being able to get there and spend a few nights in a city like San Francisco is absolutely crazy to people coming from this side of the world. But then on top of that, if you actually have to buy a pass and stuff, it's just like I can't. In my mind, I could never justify that. So yeah, my only experience with any sort of outside events is in 2018. Amaze very kindly got me over to Berlin to speak and perform at the festival, which was an amazing experience. Like really cool seeing like an outside external games event, and that's kind of like ground zero for cool, weird, crazy games. So that was an amazing opportunity. But even for someone like me who's coming from a very privileged position and does not represent your average South African, it's just completely crazy to even imagine trying to get out to those festivals. Also, on top of the actual costs in our weak currency and stuff, is generally really expensive visas to get into these places. It's really expensive to submit your games to even be considered to be a part of those festivals, which I'm sure for people living in Europe or the States, whatever, those submission fees are probably pretty fine, But for us, as a group of people that are making games that don't have a price tag, that are not making any money out of doing what we're doing, paying those sorts of submission fees at the chance of maybe getting into the festival is just very hard to justify before you're even able to think of going over there to show the game off. So yeah, my experience has been very limited, but other side of the world, I've been lucky to attend some really cool events that are game focused or game adjacent. And there's a lot of just really small community stuff that happens, which is very encouraging. Obviously, all of this has disappeared over the course of 2020, but in the past, we were doing things like short 8-hour game jams on Saturdays, which would be, totally open, free to attend, and just small groups of people getting together to work on games in short bursts of time. We're doing things like a monthly design salon where a group of developers would get together and hang out and discuss game design and stuff like that. But all of that, is very informal and in no way sort of a sponsored industry type event.
The same with Lu. If you were to join, as a hobbyist, you would have to be with other game developers, and that probably would cost like $1,000 for you to get the booth, but it's just too much. So luckily for us, when we established, back then it was called Indie Arena, and then it became Indie Fiesta, we had the opportunity to actually showcase for free, and we fought hard to ensure that independent developers could showcase their games at consumer events. Now with the pandemic, we are transitioning to more online and ensuring accessibility of opportunities, beyond the Philippines, and that they get more recognition, whether it's through local newspapers or whether it's through regional gaming sites. That is what we focused on. The great thing about Southeast Asia and Asia Pacific in general is that Japan is just a few hours away, so you get Tokyo Game Show. Taipei Game Show is one of the best shows. You have Thailand Game Show that literally has like 100,000 people every year. And then before you had GameStar, you had ESGS, you had Level Up KL, which is honestly one of the best conferences to join, that also had the Southeast Asian Game Jam and the Southeast Asian Game Awards. And then Indonesia now has their own games development summit, which is really cool because you could literally fly into Southeast Asia and just starting from Tokyo Game Show. Actually, if you wanted to go earlier, you could start with Busan Indie Connect and literally spend like 3 months of your life just in Southeast, in East and Southeast Asia. So that's been pretty cool. So I have had that privilege. I acknowledge that, and costs are so much cheaper compared to traveling from one state to the U.S. to another. It's also really cool that a lot of Western developers really like going to Japan, so that's how I've met some of the people. But the thing is that there is no reason, for example, for publishers to come into the Philippines or for platforms to come to the Philippines because there's very few games. The government is very strict. There's a lot of red tape when it comes to customs. You don't know how to identify games, whether it's in an entertainment industry or not. And these events actually ended up as a starting point for the government to understand that the games is an industry. Singapore and Malaysia are really lucky that their government is very supportive, and they have grants and funding, and they're actively lifting up the industries itself. But it's not the same for a lot of countries all over the world.
Plenty of events that call themselves international, and you see 2-3 studios from 3 different European countries, or it's like UK and North American. That's the international that they provide, which is not. It's truly not.
But I think it trickles down from sorry. It's just like a long running strange perception on what the world is for a lot of people. You know, bands will do a world tour and not even touch the African continent. It's just like, okay, cool job touring the world there, as in Europe and America, you know, maybe Australia. And I think that filters through is that, like, there are huge, wonderful chunks of the planet that are often just completely overlooked by people.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask something about events, and also add to the point that, you know, like, people from the global south are just not seen in the games industry, and it's not even like something you can say is an accident or something like, or I don't even want to say overlooked, because that sounds too nice, but it's ignored. Let's just say people from the global south are often ignored in the games industry, and even for events. Like, you know, if you think about it, it's been bothering me for a while, but it's that for our industry to move forward or something, we need to rely so much on the goodwill of individuals from different places, like individuals who donate enough to us to go somewhere, individuals who will be nice enough to introduce us to other people. It's quite messed up. And I mean, you can't ignore like the fact that you know, for a lot of our places, like, our world is a certain way because of history and because we're colonized. But even if you account for that, it's still, the way we're ignored is quite ridiculous. It's quite ridiculous. Like, when coming to make decisions, yes, these world decisions, or these international game development events, these types of things, is just countries in the global south are so ignored. It's not even funny. Like, that's why I'm super passionate about this, having a game event from the perspective of the global south, like, with that in mind, with that diversity in mind, because, like, it's ridiculous, honestly. Like, you can't, like, have to wait for someone, for the right introduction, for the right time, for the right person, to be able to construct an email the right way, when there's already so much holding us back. It's so unreasonable. Yeah, I hope things change moving forward. They have to. After 2020, things have to change. Yeah.
The IGDA itself really strives to support game developers everywhere. So let me take this opportunity to tell you a little bit more about our organization. The IGDA, the International Game Developers Association, has been doing a lot of hard work in 2020. The IGDA itself is a 501c6 nonprofit professional association. It is our mission to support and empower game developers around the world in achieving fulfilling and sustainable careers. And we work to achieve this mission by supporting game developers in many different aspects of their careers. First of all, we create resources and knowledge so that they can broaden their knowledge and expand their skill set. We also support communities and connections and networking. We ensure that game developers can meet others who can support them and can share their knowledge as well. And finally, we advocate for developers' best interests. We support diversity, we make sure that their voices are being heard, and we help put the game industry's best foot forward. When it comes to community, we have many different communities that support game developers everywhere. The first of which is our special interest groups. We have 35 special interest groups that range across advocacy, discipline, and affinity. This is everything from Black in games and women in games to game design, game writing, even quality assurance. All of these special interest groups support the developers who relate to them by providing them a community to discuss their disciplines or the challenges that they're facing, and they work to create important resources for them as well. We also have our local chapters. The IGDA has over 100 local chapters around the world. These local chapters support their local communities and give those developers an opportunity to network. These local communities are really important even in this time of virtual networking because they allow people to connect with each other that in ways that they can more easily relate. You know, sometimes it's easier to make a friend with a next door neighbor than it is with someone across the world. The IGDA leaders put together so many different events and other ways that they support the game development community. Not only do they have game jams, career nights, conferences, and other events, but they also work to create white papers, they work to speak, they work to put together research papers as well. And we do everything that we can to support them. We have to admit, 2020 kind of sucks, but the IGDA is working to make it better for game developers. We have been working on our advocacy for developers and trying to be a voice for them. We launched our game industry standards this last year, and we've taken strong stances on crunch, harassment, and ethics. We've also ensured that game developers had their voices and ideas heard when it came to important discussions like loot boxes, child online safety, and the industry events that have been happening recently. With COVID-19, we also worked to create specific resources to support developers through these challenging times. We gave them access to safety information, places that they could go for financial support. We gave them professional advice, and of course, most importantly, we gave them a community that they could talk to about this. We also launched a brand new virtual conference, the Game Development Crisis Conference, in partnership with Take This and Xbox. This was a free online conference and webinar series that had 15 talks to support game developers. It talked about issues like working from home, remote management techniques, mental health, self-care, and how to overcome technical challenges. We saw almost 15,000 attendees across these different talks. When the Black game developers within our community saw turmoil in their own communities, we gave them a platform to speak. We helped support them have a panel about what you can do, a first-person perspective, and we also supported them talking about their challenges within the game industry, particularly as we launched 2 panels on game audio. We heard composers talk about their experiences, both positive and negative, within the game community. And we are now launching our own resource for supporting diversity within games, the Inclusive Game Design and Development White Paper. We also have launched many new resources when it comes to webinars, like those panels and talks. We've had over 40 new discussions added to both our YouTube and hosted on our Twitch accounts. These webinars are available to the public and have had extremely important and timely advice for game developers. If you're interested in speaking to our community, please reach out. Speaking of our community, this last year we also launched our IGDA Discord. This Discord has been a thriving and active community that discusses all sorts of game development topics and industry news. It's been really wonderful to see how game developers have been supporting each other virtually through this Discord. We have further supported game developers by launching other new initiatives. This last year, we launched our IGDA Games Showcase, which allows IGDA members to showcase their games to our over 30,000 members. We also launched our Global Mentorship Program, so we could ensure that game developers everywhere in the world and at every level of expertise were able to find mentors to support them in their development. And finally, we launched those game industry standards that I spoke about earlier. In 2020, we also got our results from our 2019 Developer Satisfaction Survey. And while they aren't the best numbers, we are seeing positive trends. We saw that the number of women within the game industry has increased from 22 to 24%, and we hope that we can support this trend continuing. Similarly, we also saw that the average age of game developers within the industry has been increasing. This is a sign that people are feeling more stable within the game industry and feel like they can continue to support their families. Additionally, supporting this is that we've seen more game developers have children within the game industry. This is an increase and shows that game development is being seen as stable enough to support families. And the biggest event that we've hosted this year has been our eJam. It was our first virtual game jam for students. We connected over 300 students with professional mentors. This game jam ran for 48 hours and had students create over 50 games across their groups. This was a wonderful experience, and they got professional help as well as portfolio building games. If you're interested in checking those games out, you can find them on itch.io/ejam. This was a great event, and with the support of Twitch, it also saw over 250,000 viewers for the opening and closing ceremonies. So that's a bit about the IGDA, and thank you for your support and listening.
So having events more, I guess, kind of in the similar context of how people localize software and games, things like that. Looking at events production and just industries from the perspective of the people who are actually there. So, like, you can't, the people have different problems in different places. You can't just copy paste something which works in the States and try and make it work. Can't do that. You have to actually look at the problems people have, and you have to make sure those are addressed. If you look at events and just access to opportunities in the industry, for a lot of people, maybe in the West, like funding opportunities, you would say, oh, bring your prototype here, like come and pitch your prototype for funding, but the fact that a lot of people aren't even able to get to that. A lot of people here in Zambia and other places in the Global South, they have a lot of barriers before they even get to the prototyping level. So, the types of assistance and opportunities and help you need to give people a region, you have to really look at what's happening in the place. For some people, it's even something as difficult as the politics of the place, education, things like that. There's so many things that actually prevent people from working in the industry and having access to opportunities in the industry. So when I'm looking at things like African women's participation in game development, a lot of people just want to say they're not interested. Bottom line, like, oh, African women aren't interested in games. Just they want to end there. But no, if you look at, I have groups of friends, and I know so many people who play games, so many African women who play games, and to just say they're not interested, like, come on, like, no, that is absolutely not true. If you look at the types of games people play, maybe the types of games people would be interested in making. Maybe they're interested in different types of games. For example, visual novels. When I posted a lot of workshops to kind of explore what women are interested in making, and be a really big hit because a lot of African women are great writers, and they read lots of books from other African women. So it's something which is innately in a lot of them, like culturally they've had access to books, culturally they've had access to writing from other African women. They're very comfortable in the space of African women literature. So introducing game development to people from that kind of perspective, or giving opportunities to people from a writer's perspective, you probably have a lot more African women involved in game development if you look at things like that. And another thing, like also the cultural aspects of things like that. Even though, like, people seem to think like being a gamer girl, like these days, is fun and cool. Like people like to say that, but a lot of time people are still harassed. Women are still harassed a lot, and it's like I know a lot of people who like really, really hide the fact that they play games because they don't want negative attention and things like that. So we still have a lot of cultural barriers to overcome. So that's what I consider in the context of localization, like for my specific experience. But also when I'm looking into other places, it's never immediately apparent. It's never immediately apparent, but you can sense some familiar things sometimes. But the only way to understand like what would work in the context of another place is to actually interact with people from there, and actually listen to people from there. So if you are looking to localize any type of aspect of gaming, whether it's language, events, work culture, you really have to talk to the people who are from there and find the language which they speak, both literally and figuratively, if that makes sense.
But with Zach and I we ended up doing it because we have this announced game, and we were very lucky to be given the funding to just like go ahead and make a team. So we started like analyzing what are the things that we would like to bring to a workplace rather than to the game itself. After all, a studio is still like a workplace. Doesn't matter how much games industry tries to make you feel like a family or a group of friends. It's still a workplace. We still need to respect our workers. We need to provide them a safe space. We need to provide them with a good environment that doesn't make their life worse. It's just like they have fun doing their work, and they can relax. They don't need to worry about the stresses of regular studios give them. So that was the first thing that we established, that we wanted to have a really good work culture first, and then the game comes second. And from that, we also, like, Zach is from Canada, I'm from Brazil, we're in the UK, publisher is from the UK. We were collaborating with a composer from Seattle, and then this kind of stuff started happening, and we noticed that we were gaining a lot from being able to work from home. When we went to look for our first programmer, we noticed the gigantic pool of talent that is untapped because people refuse to like look into other cultures and other people for hiring. Even in times of COVID, for example, they still refuse to look past the hiring pool of their own countries. And when we found out while hiring for Bunnyhug, is that there is incredible people that are not being given the opportunity just because of where they're from. We can completely make an asynchronous game development of the game. It works perfectly. The game never stops. We communicate a lot, which makes everything work perfectly. We have not had any communication issues or misunderstandings. We respect like whatever people want to bring from their culture, from their work culture, from their countries. We are here for it. So right now we have, besides the people that I have mentioned, we have a programmer originally from New Zealand. We have someone from the Philippines. We have the artists from Brazil. We have people from all over the world, and all those cultures brought together. You would think that it would have misunderstandings, but no, everyone gets along so well, just because we just gave them a chance. That's all that is lacking right now, I think, in the games industry.
So, yeah, I mean, we could probably sit and talk for hours kind of on this subject. There's really so much to it, and so many reasons why this kind of thing is important, and so many reasons to reflect on why it's difficult to necessarily attain, but it's something that's certainly worth fighting for. I haven't had the privilege of being able to go to any other African countries and experience communities over there to see what that's like. I feel very detached, really, from what's going on, and I think that probably reflects in some way on the importance of an event like this, in that I, as a South African, have a better idea of what's happening in Europe than I do in what's happening in Zimbabwe, which is like a bordering country. So I have a very narrow view, I guess, of kind of just specifically what's happening in South Africa. And I think South Africa's game development community is a very poor representation of the makeup of the country itself. There's like a very, very clear imbalance there. And I think it's something that a lot of the people that are involved in making games in the country are quite passionate about turning around. I think, an event like Super Friendship Arcade or a collective like Super Friendship Arcade is sort of indicative of that, of being like, hey, let's really break the perception that like games are something for like white teenage boys, and really kind of recalibrate how people think about both who's playing games and who's making games. So that's sort of the agenda of the collective, but the collective itself lands up being majority white men. And this is something that in the brief time that I have been part of the South African games community, I can definitely say I've seen like some very positive change. I think particularly out of like the VITS game design course, which was the first place in South Africa where you could study game design. I think a lot of talented people have come out of that course. And just definitely over the last couple of years, there's a shift happening, but it's a sometimes very frustratingly slow change. I think for something like Playtopia, where we would really hope to see like, cool, like we're going to do Festival 1, and by Festival 2, it's going to be like we will really be able to see the benefit of what we're doing. But it feels like a lot of this is just kind of planting seeds that might only sprout years down the line. But I think it's really important to plant those seeds and to keep watering them and to keep pushing as much effort and energy as possible into trying to get, into trying to change the shape of what South African video games look like. And I mean, why it's important really doesn't even need to be said too much. Representation is obviously super, super important. I think particularly one thing that we have in South Africa that I would really love to see more of is people being able to celebrate and document different cultures through the kinds of games that are being made. Like, we all know games are an incredibly powerful, moving art form. And I think that this is not something that's specific to games, but typically in like popular culture in South Africa, there's just this sense of always trying to imitate what's happening in the West and trying to be cool by, looking like, we're from the States or something. And I think it would be amazing to contemplate a future where that shifts and where we start telling African stories for an African audience, or global South stories for a global South audience. Just really reshaping what kinds of games are being made and who they're being made for. It's super important.
I wanted to talk a little bit more about Pathfindings. Pathfindings is such an important event because it's providing support for communities that don't normally get the attention that they deserve. The Global South game development community is not always given the same amount of attention by publishers and other companies because it is a harder community to access and can be more widespread. I think that Pathfindings is going to be a great event, and even in these times where everything is virtual, it's going to be a great connector of game developers, publishers, and all of these wonderful knowledge and resources. Diversity is so important within the game industry because it allows for new ideas, new designs. If you have 5 people with the same background approaching one problem, it's so much harder to solve than if you have 5 people with different backgrounds. Our experiences, our culture, and our history help us approach ideas from new perspectives. And I'm really looking forward to seeing all the new perspectives that are going to be displayed at the Pathfindings event. I hope you can join us, and thank you so much.
The reality of the situation is that, as Ben said, we know more about in the games industry of the UK, Europe, America, compared to like the games industry in Argentina, in Chile, in even South Africa, which has a really vibrant scene. Like, and even then, South Africa literally is almost in the same time zone as the UK, but you have such a disparity of game success that it's hard not to ignore that the reason why we don't have the opportunities that you have is because of history, and because after all these years we are just reclaiming who we are and defining our identity. Like, why should somebody, if somebody was making a game to appeal to a global audience, like, that would look like what? And a lot of people from the global south think that they have to make games that appeal to the global north and to first world countries, and forget and assimilate who they are. I personally would want that to change, and would want that the games industry itself, becomes more open to stories outside of themselves. That, they have to stop looking at what's your gender, where you're from, and start looking at attitude and skill. That in order for us to truly feel welcome in the games industry, that a lot of people would have to stop saying like, wow, your English is so good. That, yeah, thanks colonization, you annexed us, remember? And that's the thing, that it's generally like, making games already is hard. It shouldn't be any harder to have information accessible to you, and to get a foot on the door in those close exclusive circles that seem to run the industry. And I think that a lot of the reasons why there needs to be a event that elevates and brings awareness to the accomplishment and to the culture of people from the global south is that, based on experience, if we keep on fighting for what's right and asking for equality and demanding a seat for a table, people don't really give us a chance. That it's we have to work so much harder, and we have to prove ourselves before we're even invited in the table. We're given the opportunities that a newcomer might get in coming in. And that's why it's important that we create opportunities, and for people like us who've been given the chance to be heard and to be listened to, it's time that we extend this opportunity to other people, not limited by region, but as Sithe and Ben said, like, it has to be a reclamation, even though politically wise, global south is a derogatory term. Like, it's time that we own up our skin color, our race, and celebrate who we are, and not see it as a means of of oppression by other people, if that makes sense.
Before I plug my project, I just wanted to say, I never really thought about it too much, but like recently I started realizing that, I honestly didn't think what I was doing. From the very beginning, in terms of getting communities, I thought I was just doing it for myself, like finding people who like to make games. But when you see that kind of stuff is really missing, it's honestly made it into like some sort of life journey for me, kind of, to see that kind of change you're talking about. Now I felt really emotional about what you said, because it's so true. Like, a lot of people are doing the work. Like, even besides me, there's so many people who are doing work, and it's never seen. And there are people who just show up and say they want to do something, get the claps, get the things, and then leave the community without changing. But anyway, we're going to plan what we're doing. So what I'm working on right now is Prosearium.net. It's an initiative to document 1,000 African women and their contributions to games. So go to the website Prosearium.net, follow us on social media, and to get to know more.
As I mentioned before, I'm co-founder of Bunnyhug. We are working on an announced title, so if you wanna keep an eye out for when we eventually announce that game, hopefully this year, you can check. You can find us at Bunnyhug Games on Twitter, or if you look for Bunnyhug Games on Google, our website's gonna show up.
Gwen, thank you so much for getting all of us together to do this, and for just kicking this entire Pathfinding's adventure into motion. I'm very honored to be a part of this. And thank you to PAX as well for having us, right? It's very cool to have this opportunity. My own stuff, I've just released, Team Lazerbeam has just released our first game with support from Superhot Presents. It's called Teenage Blob. It is about an amorphous teenage blob trying to see their favorite band and make some money to buy a pair of boots so that they don't feel like such a big loser at the gig. It's been localized to 11 different languages, so hopefully people all over the world will be able to enjoy it in their own language. And that's pretty much it. I would be very stoked if anyone plays it. Let us know what you think.
I make games with Chikon Club. We are making a cooking game without recipe, starting with Filipino cuisine, because I feel like that is just how Filipino food is. We've released a demo called Putahe ng Ina Mo, but we are expanding the game, so that's pretty exciting. This would not be possible if Lu and I didn't have a conversation about needing a Global South event, and she's done such a wonderful job at branding the whole event itself and creating all the nice graphics that you will see. Ben is working on a transcontinental game jam, just as a testament that people from across the world can work together and collaborate, and hopefully that, studios would take it like as a sign that, you could hire essentially anybody in the world, that you should take the risk. It's worked really well for Bunnyhug. Sithe and I are working towards a program to get as much countries, represented and celebrated. We're gonna do our best to create, some of the best games from the Global South that are under the radar, or that you might have not known, that are made by people from the Global South. This would not be possible without IGDA and all the publishers and studios that have essentially helped raise the money so that we could pay all our speakers, and that, provide a networking platform so that people can publish their games. And if you want to get involved, just go to the website. It's Pathfindin.gs, where GS stands for Global South. And thank you for having us, and thank you for listening to this panel. We hope that you all learned something from it, and that, you be kind to everybody. Anyway.